hey mambo, mambo Italiano, go, go, go. You mixed up a Siciliano, all you Calabrese do the mambo like a crazy with a hey mambo. Don't wanna tarantella, hey, hey.
So here's how it went down. Blue Jays game was starting in about 2 hours. Carly just went to work. Dad and I are going to sit down and watch it. Feel a little bit hungry. So I turn to him and I say, "What do you feel like eating?"
Fondue.
Is there something else I can make?
My mom used to make a pork tenderloin with the breading inside. And I haven't had it in years and years, but it was a beautiful pork tenderloin, a beautiful stuffing inside that she rolled and cooked, and with all the vegetables, and it was always fantastic.
I can do that. So I went out to the store, got the ingredients I need to make this. And here's how we did it. So we got baby new potatoes, a little bit of ginger, some corn on the cob, some very nice pork tenderloin fillets with, of course, a few nice Thai chilies, some onion, a little bit of the awesome FU, 2 apricots. Yeah, first we're going to make the stuffing, because we're going to stuff the pork tenderloin. So we're going to use a cheat stuffing. You can dry out bread and muck around if you like, but we're going to use like a basic turkey stuffing if you like. And we're going to spice it up a bit and pimp it out. So what we got here is we got some diced onion, we got some diced up apricot, ginger, garlic, and chilies in the middle there, and a little bit of Japanese pumpkin. A lot of people don't like pumpkin, but if used in cooking, you can't really tell it's there. It just adds a little bit of sweetness and a bit of substance to the meal. What we're going to do after that is I'm going to dice up some apple, and that'll be the base of the stuffing. And what we're going to use is a little bit of vegetable broth, just to wet it up and let it steam a little bit. When we get all our ingredients chopped, we're going to get the fry pan nice and hot. When you want to saute something, you get it nice and hot. Start that frying process off, and then as before any of the ingredients burn, then you throw in your liquid to deglaze and turn it right down and let it stew so that all those flavors combine together, and then you can either thicken it or add it to something else a little bit later. But we'll go into that real quick. The pan's nice and hot now, and we're going to chuck these ingredients in there. You hear that delicious sizzling sound? Well, you want it first, but you don't want it so hot that it catches fire. And I can flip it because I'm used to it, but if you're comfortable, you can use a spoon and stir it. That smells amazing already. It's just ginger, garlic, apple, and the fruits in there. All those fruits are coming out. And keep it over the heat and get it nice and hot, sizzling away. Now you want to do that for about 3 minutes, and then before it starts to burn, you add your stock, which I've got right here ready to go, and you just keep your eye on it until it's ready to start to like brown up. If you do it too early, all you're going to do is boil it. But you want that onion to fry, and the garlic and the ginger, you want them to infuse together. And as it gets hot, the fruits will sweat out into the mixture, and then we can start adding some herbs. My fresh herb mix, it's a little bit of sage from the garden, some dried thyme, and a little bit of green onion that they call spring onion because it's probably the first thing to sprout in my yard. So we're going to add that to the mix now. And when you use dry herbs, especially sage, sometimes it can suck up a lot of moisture. So you don't want to add them at the beginning of the frying process because it can take too much moisture out and your ingredients start to burn. Okay, about 3-4 minutes have passed. There's some nice browning of the onion. The garlic doesn't smell like it's burning. You always got to watch for that. And then you can just add the liquid in, and that lifts all of the flavors off the bottom of the pan. And I want to put about half of this in there because it will reduce, and as everything softens, it'll become almost like a chunky paste or a chutney. But we want to just get that in there, and then we'll want to turn it right down and simmer it for probably about 5 to 10 minutes. The pot, they're the driest stuff with, you can see there's a lot of herb in there already. I've put it in here because I can put a lid on it. You can use a bowl, wrap it in plastic afterwards, it doesn't matter. as this stuff is simmering away. I add about the same amount of water, only for the pure fact that as it simmers, it will reduce somewhat. And what you don't want is, you don't want to throw it into the stuffing mix and it'd be too dry, and on the same token you don't want to be too moist, because as the stuffing is inside the pork tenderloin, as we butterfly it open, what will happen is you want it just dry enough so that the breadcrumbs suck the moisture into the stuffing instead of it push it on the outside of the pork tenderloin, and that way you get to keep all the flavor. The aroma in this is absolutely amazing right now. It's all the fruits, everything's like starting to fuse together. So we want it to just leave that simmer for another 10 to 15 minutes, just till it's enough to get. And what you want to do is you want to get your dry mix wet, and just enough to cover it and let it steep and soak it all up. It probably takes about another 10 minutes after that. So while that stuffing is stewing away and ready to go, we want to prepare the pork tenderloin while we're here. Now there's many ways to butterfly a pork tenderloin. What you got to know is that usually the side with the strip of fat on it is the outer part. It's the most solid side, so you don't want to cut into that, because you want that to be the form of the outside of it. So we're going to flip it over to the part where it's actually being butchered off the bone, and it's usually the choppy part right here. Now the way I do it is I just roll it over a little bit, and I like to do a 3-cut. So you want to take it to about halfway, but keep it to the bottom of the meat as much as possible, and you slide it back like that, and then you open it out, and you can, from when it's opened out, you can just work away a little bit at it until it opens out a little bit further, and then you have the thin part here that it's on the bottom, and then you got the fatter part at the top. Now what you want to do is extend that fatter part, so you hold your knife nearly dead flat and try to cut that fat part in half without going through the back wall, and the back wall is what keeps it firm. See how I've almost got a dead flat surface here? So you want to open that out and just be very gentle. Open it out a little bit further, and then when you flip it over, here's your firm side. This is the part you can beat the shit out of and it will still hold. So when you're stuffing it, and especially when you're wrapping it, you want to keep it as even as possible. Now what's going to happen is, here's going to be your flat side with the firm part, and here's your mushy side that you cut out of pretty much the dead middle. So what's going to happen is, as you flip it over and you stuff it, what you want to do is you want to roll the mushy side in first, and then as you turn it around, it'll go back to its original form. But it'll be a little bit fatter, and that's why you use skewers or you wrap it in place. We've stewed the ingredients that we've sauteed and fried up just long enough now. What way to test it is to grab the hard fruit and just squash it with a fork, and if it goes all mushy, it's ready to go. Because you don't want to turn it into complete mush. You still want a little bit of substance in there when you're chucking it into the dry ingredients. So what we do is we throw it in here. We want to make sure it's about the same amount of juice and wetness as what there is croutons, because you don't want it to be too wet and you don't want it to be too dry. Get all that onion and spice in there. And then throw a little bit of, here's a secret, throw a tiny little bit of what's called Asian 5 spice in there. There's like star anise, cinnamon, nutmeg, amazing flavors that are meant to be together with apple. You can put a little bit of gin, because juniper berries and pork were born to be together. So what you want to do is you want to stir that up, get those croutons like nice and wet, make sure they're all coated evenly, and there's always going to be a little bit of juice like that sinks to the bottom. And what the trick is, now we cover it, and that steam will just soak into the croutons and keep its body in shape. We want to keep the firmness of it and still have it just dry enough so that when you stuff it inside that pork, all of those pork flavors are going to suck down into the stuffing and really finish off the meal. After about 10-15 minutes and I added the ingredients, the stuffing's absorbed most of it now, and it's just, you see it's not sloppy or anything. The croutons are still holding its form, but then it's not dry, there's no crunchy bits. It's just like delicious, and my god, that smells good. So we're gonna stuff it now into the pork. So we got our pork that we've flattened out, and this is, like I said, this is the firm side and this is the mushy side. So we're going to turn that over, and we've got a nice flat surface. It's very even. Now what we want to do is we want to take our mush, which is the stuffing with so much aroma, but like it's just dry enough that it'll suck on that pork in. And you don't want to overstuff it because it makes it extremely hard to roll. But it doesn't matter if it hangs out the end because it's all going to get eaten in the end, right? So we'll turn it over. Here's the mushy side. Okay. So we're gonna just get it to like a big fat joint, if you like. Let's just roll it down, and we're gonna roll it over there. And you can be forceful with it, like you shove it. You gotta own it. It's like a burrito. And then roll it over. And that's it there. Now you can leave it like that, or you can use butcher's twine and roll it, but I'm telling you now, what happens is the meat shrinks just a little bit. I've just cut up some skewers here, and you can just jab them in just enough to like hold the meat together. You don't have to be a doctor about it. Just jab them in, just and on angles so that you can still lay it flat. So what I've done is here, we're going to take it over here. That's a nice stuffed pork. And for aesthetic purposes, I have used one of these, what are they, glass baking trays? But we're going to lay them in here, and I'm going to put 2 of them like that with some nice new potatoes around it, and then we're going to bake it in the oven. Okay, so here's the part where we put it in the oven. We've stuffed it already. We've got it all like laid out. We've got some baby new potatoes over there. Now my favorite thing in the world is we're gonna get some seeded mustard. You can use hot dog mustard. It doesn't really matter. You just want to get it on there. And at this stage before the cooking phase, and I've washed my hands, we're gonna use our fingers to like make sure that's all on there properly. I want to just spread it out, and you get a bit of salt and pepper and season it. Now, just for a little bit of added flavor on the outside, we're going to stick some apricot slices right up here. Now, fruits, sweet things like apple, apricot, you can use grapes, you can use juniper berries or gin, which is made from juniper berries. All these things, all these flavors go together with pork, especially like 5 spices and all the sweet stuff. Anything sweet. Sweetened pork is absolutely delicious. So that's something absolutely simple. You know, yeah, it took me an hour to stuff it and make it, but that's because I went to a little bit of effort. It's really not that hard. There's extra stuffing. We can add it later. And all we're going to serve it with is these roasted vegetables, some mixed veggies, and some pork gravy, which I'll show you how to do right before we serve it. And that'll be the end of the cooking video. So we put the oven on. We're going to set it to, I want to set it to about 202 degrees Celsius, because we don't want to cover it. We wanted that to roast on there. We've just lightly brushed it with oil, and then every now and then we'll get a brush and just brush it over and let all that caramelize onto the pork. The other added feature of adding fruit to the top of the pork is it will stop it from drying out. As the fruit sweats, it will actually create liquid that will baste the pork as it cooks and infuse with all this mustard flavor that's right here. And honestly, it's probably one of the best pork dishes I've ever cooked in my career. The last part before the pork's roasting in the oven, it's getting all sexy and delicious. What we want to do is we want to have now it's going to be served with the potatoes, but no meal is complete without an excellent sauce. And the easiest way for anyone to make a good sauce is you can buy, this is just some, I won't say the brand, but it's a generic pork gravy. It comes in a little packet. It's about 80 cents. I got 2 of them, and the best way to do it is to buy something that's bland and really not that flavorful, and then make it flavorful. Like, so you pimp it basically. So we're gonna take the rest of this vegetable broth that's here, and this will be the base of our gravy, because it's kind of like cheating with the old turkey dinner and the pan gravy, where you know all the juices lay in there. And what you can do is, after you've made the gravy and you pull your pork out and all your vegetables out, you can actually add this to the pan that had the pork in it, and it'll soak up any flavor that's left behind. So what we want to do is we add our pork stock there. We get a little bit of the mustard here, and then we bring that to the boil, stir in our gravy mix, which we mix with a little bit of water, and then to thicken it, here's the stuffing that's left over that I haven't stuffed in the pork yet because I have a few extras left over. We're going to actually use that and all the flavors in there to give the gravy some substance and some thickness. And then we're going to serve that on top of the pork with a little bit of applesauce on the side, because applesauce and pork are born to be together. Okay, so the best part, everything's in the oven, roasting away. It smells amazing. I can't wait to eat it. If you look down here, we've got some leftover stuffing, and there's nothing wrong with just putting stuffing on bread with a bit of gravy the next day. That's always a good thing. So, now the water and the stock and the mustard seeds are boiling. We take that off, and it's all like bubbling away like crazy. Now this is where we add our gravy paste. This is just mixing in the cheap gravy and with a little bit of water, just enough to make a paste out of it. All the lumps are gone from it. Now this is the tricky bit. Now what you want to do is you want to take your whisk and you want to whisk it quickly as you add it. There's about 2 cups of liquid in this pot to about 2 packets. So it's about a cup a packet. Now if you see it, it's really not that thick. It doesn't look that interesting. It's kind of thin and transparent looking, which for a pork gravy you kind of want. Now here's where a little trick comes in. If you want to thicken something, instead of adding more thickener, just add a little bit of this delicious, with all of the fried onion and the ginger and everything in there. Just chuck it in there. We call it evil gravy. It's not good for your heart, but it's goddamn tasty. So we chuck enough in, not too much. Just let it in there. Turn it around, and what that will do, as it sucks up the excess liquid that normally makes it thin, it will act as a thickener. It's kind of like a roux. So what you want to do, we call it evil gravy. Like you can now at the end of the cooking event, after you take your pork tenderloin out and you take your potatoes out, then you can do the old grandma method of pan gravy, where you tip this into the pan itself and whisk it around and get all of the juices that came out of the pork, and that adds to the gravy, and that's what makes an amazing sauce. All of those flavors just like suck into that sauce, and already it's becoming thicker as that breaks down. Now we've gone to that phase of it. You don't need to boil it. The water's already boiled. The corn flour and the gravy is already like coagulated. Now what you want to do is you want to let those croutons dissipate and actually thicken into the gravy, and it will become a little bit smoother. So what you do is we turn that down dead low and just put the lid on it. And just let that sit there for while the rest of it's cooking. And because of the lid, none of it will actually like reduce or anything, but what will happen is it will thicken. And the best way to do it is in some kind of a non-stick pan, because the bread as it soaks gets heavy and sinks to the bottom. What happens is it sinks down to the bottom, and if you leave it for a long period of time, it actually burns on the bottom. And once it burns, your gravy is kind of ruined. So you want to just let it simmer, let the breadcrumbs like soak it all up, all that flavor infuses, and if it sits there for 20 minutes, all of the flavors that you put initially into the croutons will come out in the gravy, and you'll have an all-round delicious meal. The white potatoes, the baby potatoes, they're the ones that will be the bland part of the meal, and that will soak up all that gravy and all those tastiness, and we'll show you what happens afterwards.
Nathan?
Yeah?
I noticed you added a little bit of water to the stock in there.
Absolutely. Good point, Dad. Never be afraid to add a little bit of water. If you're making stocks and sauces, sometimes you can add a few herbs and spices, or you might put a little bit of extra bread. Don't add too much water. Just add water like a medium, if you like. You can just add a little bit until it gets the right consistency, and it won't bland out the sauce too much. Often a lot of ingredients like this are extremely spicy. They have a lot of flavor, putting a little bit of water doesn't ruin it. It actually brings it back to that point where it should be, without making it too salty or anything, or too bland. Like, don't be afraid to add a little bit of water. Always have a cup of water handy, and then if you see something coming a little bit like too pasty or too dry, just put it, just add a little bit until it's usable again. Okay. Alright, so we've pulled this out of the oven, and if you notice, all the pork is like, I didn't put too much oil because I don't like an oily meal. All the pork is like browned up nicely. At this stage it's probably cooked, but because of the stuffing inside, it'll hold for at least another half an hour. But the potatoes have a nice little bake on them. They're browned a little bit, and because if you put more oil, they'll brown a lot more. But what we want to do is we're gonna change things up a little bit. Here's that gravy with all the croutons. Now you can't really see any croutons, but it's a nice thick gravy. Little bits of chunk in there, not too much. So give it a good whisk. All that flavor is in there. Now you can do the reverse. Oh god, that smells good. You do the reverse gravy method, or we can finish this off and pour it all over there like that. And then as that finishes in there, what'll happen is the potatoes will finish steaming. The pork will not dry out because of all the moisture in the in that gravy. So we're kind of steaming it to finish, and in the process, it's gonna reduce that gravy a little more, so it's a little thicker. Here's some corn husks that I've put in. Oh, that's hot. Now, corn husks have so many layers. The juice inside, it's just steaming away. You don't have to wet it when you're doing it like this, because you want to enjoy the butter, and that's the best part. Butter and salt.
Wow, that smells delicious.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I know I'm not supposed to say anything, but that smells fantastic.
Okay, so I just want to peel this back, and all of the moisture from the corn is trapped inside the husk. So and the problem is with this is it's hot as hell. So you kind of got to peel it back and get all those strings in there. You pull it back. There you go. It's ready to go. Oh man, that smells good. Now you can cut it off the husk because it'll fit on the plate a little better. Or you can just muscle it and pull it off. Ow! Okay, so there's your corn on the cob. Now you can serve it in one chunk, or you can like get fancy with it and make it into a few slices. But first we need the base. The base is here. It's just a little bit of like mixed veggies that I got, and I put a little bit of the excess stuffing in there because often with these meals, when they're not overly stuffed, you kind of wish there was more stuffing because that's the tasty part. So we're going to add that in there, and that's the bed. Okay, so that's going to suck up all the gravy, and now we can do slices if we want. And that's the end piece.
I love the end piece.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's not a problem. I can just chuck that in there. So there's what it looks like when it's done. All the stuffing's inside. It's good to go. You can get fancy with it, or you can just eat it and just put it on as a chunk. My dad likes smaller portions, but I'm going to give him 3 anyway. So that's the pork right there. Oh my god, that smells good. Oh, far out. And then we get the baby potatoes. We can just put them around like this. You can be color coordinated if you like. At the end of the day, we just want to eat some tasty stuff. And what's left in here is all that gravy with the croutons and all the flavor from the bottom of the pan. We want to drizzle that over the top. Oh, And then we're going to add some hot sauce. And then we're going to put some butter on the corn. A little bit of salt and pepper on the table. This is a simple dish. Takes about an hour and a half. And with 2 pork tenderloins, the total cost was about $20 for this meal. And it would feed about 8 people. So very economical. Super easy. I'm being super messy right now, but like, this is the serving stage, so we're allowed to be. All that gravy and the peppercorns and all the ginger and the garlic and the chilies. And then, like, because it's very salty and flavorful, the potatoes actually act like a blender, and when you eat them all in one fork together, they're delicious. And we're going to put that there. We're going to add a little bit of Uncle Nate's F here. And then, best of all, they call it applesauce, but really it's just stewed apples. You don't have to get expensive ones. Just get like the regular one. And you just drizzle it on top. Because apple and pork were meant to be together. And don't forget to put butter and salt on your corn.
As my mother used to say, Nathan, the Queen of England isn't eating any better than us tonight.
Yum.
Well, I'm down on my luck and I don't have a buck or a penny. Mailman, won't you bring me a letter about how I won the lottery? And maybe